Okay, I'm gonna keep going with simulating GitHub. And what's fun about GitHub is that there's just an amazing amount of stuff going on with GitHub here. And last time, what I did was just set up some basic things like, for example, getting CI/CD set up and making sure that all that stuff works. And then I believe I probably also was able to set up a Docker file that is able to load things in so that when I use my dev container, everything's great. So we can actually just keep going on getting GitHub figured out here. There's some really, really cool stuff you can do with GitHub, and we can get right into it. So I'm opening up my dev container environment. And one of the cool things about this environment, if we go to file, let's see here, go. Or actually, let's just wait for this thing to open up. We can close some of these other files here. Okay, so we got this template set up, and a few things to point out about this particular environment is we have this make file. I always think it's a good idea to put a make file inside. And if I go through and I open up a new shell, you can see I've got shells set up here. There's also a setup. So if we want to go ahead and say, for example, bash setup, we could do something like this. And I guess the main takeaway here is that with these dev container files, that a lot of times it is a good idea to have them in a pre-build mode. And so that might be something I'll just take a look at real quick. Is did I set up pre-build for this? Let's go to code spaces. So yeah, it is doing a pre-build. But it looks like the setup didn't totally finish. So if you ever have that issue where it didn't fully set up, all you do is you just say full rebuild of the container. Now, before I do that though, let's just make sure I didn't have any local changes. Always a good idea to say like a git status. Yeah, nothing. So we can just rebuild this real quick. Just do a rebuild of the container. And what happens when you do a rebuild of your code space container is that it will actually go through and look inside of this particular directory called .dev container, and it will look at the Docker file. It will use whatever it is that you configured as your base, run all the commands, do whatever setups you have. In this case, I'm copying some things inside, creating a Python virtual environment. And then it will also go to the dev container.json file here. And what it can do is put in all the stuff that you see here. So, and then notice here that this is a post create command. So whatever kind of post create command you wanted to do, you can put that post create command here. And you can see in this particular environment, what I do is I just source the virtual environment and then I put it inside of my bash RC file. Let's go ahead and look at the logs here, and you can see this thing getting built. So this is actually a very good idea to really make this thing the source of truth, your dev container file. Now, another thing that you can do, which is nice, is you can actually say code space pre-build, and you can create a badge right here, and you can see here that it shows all of the builds, which is pretty nice, that you're able to actually share with people that you've been able to actually build in this particular environment. Now, one thing while this is building that would be kind of cool to do is that you can tell your unit tests to actually use your code space itself, which is pretty slick. And so what we can do is go to the documentation for this, and we can say GitHub code spaces use code spaces test GitHub actions. So we can tweak our GitHub actions. Um, we can basically say GitHub actions using code spaces. Um, and what we can do is we can, so we have the pre-builds, but what if I want to actually use that for GitHub actions? So I'm going to go to GitHub docs here, and we're going to say GitHub actions container. That's what we want to do. So what we want to do is see if we can use GitHub actions with a dev container. That's what we want to, that's the Google. So we want to say um, GitHub actions and dev container. That would be awesome to be able to take the exact same image that we used before. So it says dev container and run GitHub actions is aimed at making it easier to use the dev container in a GitHub workflow. And so let's even put this as a doc so that I have it. Look, this is very recent too, which I like. And so if we go back here, you can see it's almost finishing. That I'll put this as a doc here, and we'll just put a reference, and we'll say reference here. Use GitHub actions with .dev container. And there we go. Perfect. And if we go to this, look at this. So this, the simplest example, that's what we want to try, is that you can say build and run dev container task. So with the example above, each time the action runs, it'll rebuild the Docker image for dev container to save time in the build. So that is pretty cool. With the example, it will rebuild the Docker image for the dev container. So that would be kind of cool. It would just rebuild it automatically. But what if I want to pre-building an image? That's what we want to do. Using dev container for a CI build, both at once. So this is, I think, what we want to do now. So we want to do both at once, pre-build and run the build in the container. Images, example, dev container. Use a dev container for a CI build. If you have a separate workflow to pre-build it, you can reference it, cache from, make CI build. I think we want something like this. So this thing is almost done here, or it's about to load up. But if we go to settings and we go to code spaces and we look at this, we see here's the configuration file. We see pre-build configs. I believe so. This is now running. Look, and here we go. Now everything's set up. Everything's great. So usually the thing I like to do when I get into an environment like this is always do make all. And if we look at the make file here, you can see that all this stuff is working. Hooray! Awesome. But there's a few things, like I mentioned, that will be good to figure out, and one of them is to figure out how to do GitHub actions so that it can test. So get pull. Whoa, there's a lot of changes here. So we see this. We can do GitHub, and so Now this is not bad, but I want to figure out a way to test out the dev container. So if we do another one, if we say touch.github workflows, we put CI, say dev container CI YAML. That's what we want. So what we want to do now is we want to figure out dev containers, pre-build using that's what we want. We want to say, oh, optional. We don't need this. So run it in a dev container, uses dev container CI. Let's try this. So let's copy this and we can go to this file. So run CI build in a dev container, uses dev container. So we already have the pre-build here. If you have a separate workflow to pre-build your container image, you can reference it to speed up your application workflow, cache from. So this is interesting. If you have a separate workflow to pre-build your container image, you can reference it here. So I don't know about that run command, push dev containers here. It's too bad it doesn't tell you, like in this particular example here, if we go to my GitHub organization, we can maybe take a look at that real quick. And if we go to settings and we go to, what do we have? We have a repo. We have packages. We have actions, general. We have caches. Nothing has been cached. Caching dependencies. So this would be a nice one to figure out how to cache this. So maybe what I need to do is first get something to work. And so I'm going to, just so that I know I have something like this somewhere in my repo, I'm going to go back to my organization real quick. And I'm going to find an example where I've been able to do dev containers. Aha, here we go. Let's see this one. Here we go. Let's look at this. So this is what I want. I'm going to grab this. There we go. So look, Python application test with GitHub using dev container. So this is going to use my dev container, and it's going to do my make install. It's going to do my make lint. It's going to do my make test, and it's going to do my make format. Now it doesn't cache it though, which would be awesome for me to figure out. So what I'm going to do is just try it out. So let's say git status, git add GitHub, git commit, adding dev container CI pipeline. Let's push this. So once I push this, if we go back to repository here and we go to actions, there we go. So what's going to happen is this build is very different because it's actually going to be using the dev container. Now, what I'm curious about, because I have pre-built dev container, is why wouldn't it use the pre-build that I've already got set up? That's what I don't know. And this is what will be interesting, but it looks like it's just building the entire thing, right? So that's the next thing that I would need to figure out is test build, post test build and run dev container task, post run checkout. So it appears to be cranking. Now, if I go back to this documentation, though, let me reread it again. The dev container build and run GitHub is aimed at making it easier to reuse dev containers. The action supports using a dev container to run commands for CI/CD. Dev container image building supports dev container features. Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. It says this is not capable of using pre-built. However, pre-built images are supported. Okay, there we go. Perfect. That does explain it for me. So pre-building an image name uses dev containers. Well, I don't know how this works. So how do you do this? Build and run it. A dev container task. That's easy. To enable pushing dev container you need to specify a qualified name and that your GitHub workflow is signed into that registry. The example shows installing Docker build kit, logging into it, then building with this particular config. So you would need to know basically your GitHub token. This looks pretty complicated. Worth doing though at some point. So I think I will play around with this at some point. I'll put a note in the README here that says, like, episode 2 got testing in pre-build. Say like maybe episode 3, try to push and cache image. Yes, so kind of a bummer that it doesn't actually use the pre-built dev containers. But you can see here, it's going to take a while. It's going to go through here. It's going to build all this stuff. So at least though, I've got two different builds that are happening. And if we go back here, you should see like that it's got CI/CD, which it was super quick. We've got pre-builds, which unfortunately is not linked to this other one. And I have a third build. So I have 3 different builds that are happening inside of this particular scenario. And in fact, I could create a status badge for that. And we could say Python with GitHub Actions using dev containers. So I have a third job here. And so if I go into the README, we can put this one in as well. There we go. So now I can, this was accomplished via, so this was accomplished via this, via dev container ci.yml. Okay, so let's take status and add README. Git commit, adding README, push. There we go. That's nice. So at least I did get that thing working. Now the other one that would be kind of cool, since I do have a little bit of time, is to figure out one more trick that we could do with GitHub. And I would say the other trick that we haven't yet done here, so you can see now we have 3 different jobs, is matrix testing. So let's do that one as well. Matrix Python matrix code. Let's see if we can find one. Dev containers. No. Matrix Python. So let's go back to my repo here and let's look for matrix. Code example for, here we go. This is what I'm looking for. So yeah, one of the things that you can do that's pretty slick with GitHub Actions is, check this out. You can actually test multiple versions of Python inside of your project. So this is invaluable for somebody that needs to work with lots of different versions of Python. And we can actually just grab this and just use it. So let's go ahead and do this one as well. Always a good idea to know how to do this. Let's do a git pull here. Make sure we have all the changes. Great. So let's make one more. So we'll say .github workflows, and we'll call this matrix Python .yml. And what's cool about this is, and we can put a README that says pre-build and matrix testing. So this was one. Here's another one. Setup matrix build. And now let's refer to, and that was matrix Python. And so what we can do is say matrix Python GitHub actions that we can refer to this. Look, building and testing. So we can figure out all kinds of cool stuff here. So there we go. Python versions. You can use a pre-installed version of Python or PyPy on a GitHub hosted runner using this. So look, we can see this action finds a specified version of Python or PyPy from the tools cache. Using setup Python is recommended way of using Python with GitHub Actions because it ensures consistent behavior inside of here. If you're using checkup, using a specific version, wow, and you can even configure a specific version of Python. This uses the latest mirror release of Python 3. You can also exclude versions as well. Python latest, Python versions. Wow, this is super complex, but also cool. Python versions, you can give it requirement files. You can, ooh, here we go. You can also cache the dependencies with setup Python. Well, this will cache the dependencies for pip. Whoa, this is nice. So let's try this. So let's go back to this matrix and let's read everything we got. So we're going to push to main. This is going to run on Ubuntu latest. We're going to do 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 3.10. Let's just double check that we can cache with. Now we would want to do this for each one with Python version. Let's see, we just need to do this. We would only need this part, so we can delete that. This is pretty slick as well because this will cache the versions of pip, and because we've pinned these versions here, right? So since we've pinned all these, then they should be really, really fast. So let's try this out. Actually, let's see. Let's say git status. Let's add this in here. Git commit adding cached actions. Now, if we go back to our repository, we go to actions. We see that this one is just taking. Oh no! Look, it finished it. It took 10 minutes, so it did work with the dev container, which is awesome. But now I don't know which one's which, But I need to change the name of this. This should be called name matrix test Python. So let's add it again. And then we'll switch it. So there we go. Matrix test Python. So look at that. It only took 45 seconds, which is shocking. Look at this. It did each of these in 29 seconds, which is pretty amazing. In parallel, it tested 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 3.10, which is pretty amazing actually. That's awesome. And then if we go back to the matrix, if we go to a regular one, look, it's only doing 1 in 29 seconds. No, look, it's doing, how long does this take? 19 seconds. Now, I don't think this is caching though. I guess we don't know yet. But yeah, so this one definitely, I believe, will cache because it says with Python version cache pip. And if we look at the other one, see, it doesn't cache. But why not? Why don't we cache this as well? So if we go to this and we say runs with, would we do the same thing? We would say, oh, or does it need to actually, I think it needs to go over. But let's double check I'm doing this right, because this seems, no, I guess you do. You do here. That's it. You just say with. After you update pip, you do that. But if you want to cache it, so why do you do it? Is it differently? So why does it say run pip install? By default, it searches for a dependency. If you have custom requirements, you can use cache action. For more examples, see Python caching examples. Maybe I'm not doing this right. Simple example. Multiple OSs in a workflow. In a matrix. Using pip. Multiple operating systems. Wow, so it can do OS 10 as well. That's amazing. Multiple OSs. With cache pip. Huh, it's interesting. I really don't know. Why does it ask me to do run then right there? Name. But is that good enough? It's hard to know whether this is, I'd have to really dig into this to see more about this. Cache, outputs, generate prime numbers, implementation, Python pip. The cache directory will, we also have this, uses actions cache. Replace this. Yeah, very tough to know exactly if this is working or not, but I'll have to dig into that later. But in theory, if we go back here, what I don't understand is, oh, it's rebuilding the entire dev container again because it'll rebuild it every single time. So it would be nice to figure out how to cache that. But in terms of the Python matrix testing, these, well, 14 seconds is pretty fast. Maybe it is caching it. It would be nice if we could verify whether it was caching. We could look real quick, right? We could say install packages. Oh, yeah, there we go. Using cached, right? So we see using cache there. Now that's how we can tell. And then if we go to the other one, which I believe doesn't use cached. Look, see, it's not using cached. So we can see that in fact that it is working. So that's nice to know. And so if I wanted to cache the matrix, if I wanted to copy the cache style, right? Because we can see 14 seconds, 20 seconds. We could do the same thing if we needed to. So pretty good. I'm able to get matrix testing, caching. I would be curious how many versions of Python are available. I don't know if they have a documentation around that. Like, where are the examples for this? Python, learn about it, starter. How do you know specify? Oh, here we go. Python versions. This is what I was caring about. Okay, so Python, we're adding new versions. This contains how many? So let's put a note to this. This is good to know. Whoa, look at this. This is really, really cool stuff. I didn't know this. So I'm going to add this into the README, and we're going to say to find out all of the versions of Python, you can do this. There you go. Now let's tweak it one more thing. Let's add more here, right? We can always add more. So let's see what other versions of Python we've got. We have Python 3.11. We have Python 3.12. We have 3.11 and 3.12. So let's try it out. Man, this is really fun. I'm so glad I tried this out because we have 3.11 and 3.12. Let's just say here, git status, add.github, commit, adding 2 more versions of Python. Pretty cool. Adding 2 more versions of Python. There we go. Now let's see, does this work? I'm skeptical that it will work because I don't know about these versions of Python. But whoa, look at this. So they're all using cached. Probably the second time they'll be faster. But look at this. We got 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 3.10, 3.11, 3.12. So holy smoke. So I'm not surprised that one of them doesn't work. I mean, who knows? Like so this, it's probably alpha, so it won't work. Let's see here though. So 3.12 is off. 3.9, does that work? Well, I think we have to remove 3.12. Let's get rid of this. Unless I put now what is it? But it says 3.12 alpha, but 3.11 beta, 3.11 alpha, 3.10. I mean, I don't exactly know how you would do this. So it'd be 3 that, and then would I put the other one here? Let's try that. 3.12 alpha 2. Does that work? I don't know how brittle this is though. Like, for example, do these alphas and betas, what happens to them? Do they go away or probably? Okay. Let's check it out real quick. Go back to this. We have let's check this out. So we have 3.7, 3.10, 3.11. Well, that didn't work. Oh, it's not found. So stable. Well, those other versions are a little experimental, but in theory, we could do when they get stable, we could add them. Add it. I think I did enough. Had some fun. And next time I'll try to figure out how to cache dev container builds. Status. Git add readme. Git add readme. Git commit. Push. All right. Be back on this project in a couple weeks.